All right, the clock is ticking. Former President Donald Trump has just 2 more days to come up with a massive bond in New York. He owes more than $460 million following a judgment in his civil fraud trial. But Trump's lawyers have made it clear in detailed court filings that Trump doesn't have the cash. Joining us right now, attorney Mitchell Epner. He is a litigator in New York who focuses on commercial and white-collar issues. Mitchell, great to see you. So Bloomberg reported a while back that Trump has $500 million in cash, but he'll really need about, what, $557 million? Trump has other loans which require him to have tens of millions in cash on hand. So what happens if he can't deliver this $500 million on Monday?
So if he can't deliver the security and the court doesn't give him dispensation from having to deliver the security, then starting on Tuesday, New York Attorney General Letitia James can start trying to execute against his property, which would be broken down into 3 categories. One would be cash and cash equivalents in things like bank accounts and securities accounts. 2 would be personal property, which is everything from clothing to furniture to cars to planes, and then 3rd would be real estate. On that spectrum, the cash can get grabbed the most quickly, personal property will take a little bit longer, and the real estate takes the longest period of time. But that process will start on Tuesday.
Wow.
And once that process starts, he really can't do anything in order to stop it from happening.
So the Attorney General, Letitia James, while she's entered the judgments in Westchester County, where indeed he has at least 2 properties that we know of, right? And you talk about the sequence, it would be bank accounts, then personal property, real estate. And when you're talking about this kind of money, it would seem that the real estate is going to get you that amount of money a little bit sooner. I mean, he's got that golf property, in Westchester, that Seven Springs estate, if that's where she's already made her filings. How long would it be before you would see lien notices on that property if Tuesday is when bank accounts would be seized, et cetera?
So the notices, the start of the process, I think will happen very quickly, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and that will be both Westchester and in New York City, where he has, for example, 40 Wall Street, his small remaining ownership interest in Trump Tower, his small ownership interest in Trump International Hotel in Columbus Circle, where CNN's headquarters used to be. Those sorts of things will happen very quickly, but getting to the end of the process on real estate takes months or years, whereas getting to the end of the process on bank accounts would take days, maybe weeks.
And just to clarify, while CNN, yes, used to be headquartered at Columbus Circle, it wasn't in the Trump building. The Trump building was across the street. just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I did not mean
That's
to.
okay. Just to be clear. Okay. So Trump's lawyers say more than 30 underwriters refused to post the bond, but Trump seems to have undermined his argument that he can't pay, posting on Truth Social, in fact, that he currently has $500 million in cash. So if that's true, do you see that there's no way in which he could hide that kind of cash? It would be in stateside banks where there would be access to a Letitia James or her people?
The problem he has is New York has very exacting post-judgment discovery. Within the week, he will have questions in front of him, and probably within 2 weeks, he will have to sit for a deposition to explain where all of this cash is. And if he fails to answer, or if he answers untruthfully, he could be held in contempt of court, and that could lead to truly horrific consequences for him. I'm not saying it would happen, but the consequences could be literally devastating for him.
He wants to be back in the White House. If he doesn't, produce the $500 million, and if indeed properties are seized, and Election Day rolls around, he finds his way back in the White House, what happens to the process of collecting on this penalty?
So if he becomes president again on January 20th, I would not be surprised if he tried to interject the Department of Justice to stop this process. That's never happened before, so I don't have a good answer for whether or not the Department of Justice would be able to do anything. But former President Trump has demonstrated that he will use all of the levers of power available to him to serve his personal interest.
All right, all fascinating. Mitchell Epner, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.